I am the Philosophical Bachelor, and today I want to announce that in the next couple of days, I will no longer actually be a bachelor in the sense of studying for a bachelor degree. I have completed my final exams now for some weeks, and by the 30th of June, I would have graduated. And I just want to spend today to reflect a bit about my philosophical journey. It has been a dream for me to return to school. I'm a mature student and I've worked for approximately 20 years before coming back. And it has been a dream for me actually to return to school because I enjoyed my previous studies very much from, 20 years ago. I have a master's degree in engineering previously. And I enjoyed it so much that I wanted to come back to school to learn something again. It was clear to me after many years that philosophy was my thing and that I wanted to pursue it. I wanted to learn more, not so much so that I could become a professor in philosophy or have any job opportunities in philosophy. That wasn't my objective, but it was more to understand the big questions that has been facing the world for thousands of years now. And it felt really important that I investigate these questions for myself. And also, of course, my hope is to be able to contribute in some way. Though, of course, the ground has been well tilled and I'm not sure what exactly it is that I can bring to the table in future. But that is part of the reason why I even began the channel, so that I could continue my philosophical journey even beyond my studies. And so far, I've been mainly reading the essays that I have written for the course over these 3 years. But soon these are going to run out and I'm going to have to create original content. And so I hope that you would find them also interesting, or perhaps even more interesting than my current content, which tend to be rather academic in orientation. So I spent 3 years doing a bachelor's degree in philosophy abroad, and I'm not going to so much talk about the details of the studies itself, even though they have been quite tremendous, there have been ups and downs. But I think that in this time, I've actually gained so much knowledge. Even in the first term alone, I think I have learned more about philosophy than in my entire life prior to that. And of course, prior to that, I've already read many books and tried to learn on my own and also listen to many videos. But nothing beats a proper rigorous education, in my opinion, if one wants to be properly grounded. And the course that I was on was a bachelor degree at KU Leuven in Belgium. And I felt that the content was very good actually. It covered a very broad span of topics, from continental philosophy to analytic philosophy, and of course covering the core subjects like logic. And I also did a lot of theology subjects, so I also covered the major religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, and Islam. And while I'm not religious, these religious studies are important because these are important to people, and something that's important to people will be something that is important to philosophy, in my opinion. I've also covered subjects like philosophy of technology, which is closer to my former area of work. Indeed, I think that perhaps this can be an area that I can explore more deeply along the way, but we'll see. Nonetheless, I think the whole idea of philosophy is to become a better thinker. I must say that I have indeed become more knowledgeable. I will not make the claim that I am wiser, because I think that is a big claim indeed. And even in my behavior, I think I'm still in many ways as silly as I ever was. But, this is what a human being is like, with all our follies and our errors, and of course also our accomplishments and our good qualities. For those thinking of doing a philosophy degree, I would say that you have to go into it with a mindset to think not so much of career prospects, but more of trying to become a better thinker, certainly. We still read the texts of people who have died now a few thousand years ago, like Plato and Aristotle, And the reason why we still read them today, the reason why they have survived the test of time, is because the questions they have been asking since antiquity are still the same questions that we are confronted with today. Like, what is the good life? What is the meaning of life? What is it to be a good person? What is goodness? And this is just in the area of moral ethics. Even in the area of how do we know what we know? How can we have any knowledge at all? How do we know that we're not just dreaming? Or do we know? And does it even matter? And how do we create knowledge? Even in this knowledge that we create, the foundations, are they strong enough to sustain the whole edifice of knowledge above it? The thing is that many people feel that philosophy is, in a way, futile, since these questions do not seem to have straightforward answers. But I must say that life is complicated. And so why do we expect to have simple answers? And in this way, I think we have been spoiled by science education, where we are now acclimatized to think that we're just going to be able to have simple answers like 5 or 15 as an answer, when in fact, real life is so much more complicated. The human being is an ever-evolving animal, and our societies too are changing. So what even might be an answer for yesteryears may no longer be an answer, a suitable answer for the future. For example, questions like what is the best form of government might be something that is a process in the making, where we are still in the process of discovery. Even today, with democracy being the leading model of governance, even this democracy, there are many models of democracy in itself. For example, representational democracy or first past the post, and then we have constitutional democracies in some countries who still have a monarchy. And what is the role for these monarchs, if any at all? So this is in the realm of political philosophy. And then we have the realm of analytic philosophy, which is very grounded in the study of language, which tries to tease apart concepts that we have taken for granted, to try to understand them really deeply, even on topics like what is bullshit, amazingly enough. There are then many areas that we study what is very pressing to the world, especially in the domain of ethics, where we explore questions like globalization and the case for open or closed borders, and also things like the ethics of care, where in fact it puts morality or conventional morality, for example, the Kantian notions of the categorical imperative, to the side, and instead put to the front relationships that we have with one another as the core of what drives us to act in a moral manner. Philosophy helps us to understand the world better as well. When we look at, for example, communism, which is still a very ripe area for study in the form of critical theory, which explores how thinkers have come to critique what seems to be the conventional way of thinking, and to consider whether or not these paradigms that we have are valid. And the problem with what seems to be even good going, and how it lays the seeds for its own destruction subsequently. So I've spoken very broadly about some of the subject areas that we have covered, and I think that if you feel like you're interested to pursue philosophy, certainly turn to the more academic kind of videos that you can find online, and I'll put some links in the description below, and see for yourself whether this is your cup of tea. Certainly you would realize in your journey, if you do embark on it, that some subjects may not be to your taste. For example, many of my fellow students don't seem to like logic too much. But you have to understand that the subjects that have been chosen for a bachelor degree are meant to provide a foundation so that one can pursue philosophy further at a graduate level. And so you have to think that all these are in fact necessary building blocks for you. Philosophy is, to me, a way of life, not so much a kind of study that you do for the sake of trying to pass exams or to build a career out of it. it is what we do because it is in our essence as human beings to inquire, to wonder about things, and to ponder about why we are even here and what are we trying to do and what is the point of it all. And this precisely is where philosophy comes to the fore, because all disciplines, looking back in time, originate from philosophy. By this, I mean the sciences. When they are able to have enough concrete standing of their own, that's when they splice out from philosophy to become their own discipline. And this is true of biology, physics, psychology, sociology. These disciplines all have originated from philosophy, even medicine. Some of them are known as natural philosophy in the past, and today some of them are known as the human sciences or the humanities. What remains are still the questions that we grapple with. And this grappling is necessary. We still have to continue this journey of inquiry because we simply cannot just put aside questions of the foundations of our knowledge, questions about what is the meaning that we have, questions on what sense can we make of how things are today. We can't help it as human beings to think deeper, to try to reach the frontiers of our knowledge. And indeed, philosophy also tries to establish what are these frontiers of our knowledge beyond which we can say nothing. As I said, philosophy is a way of life, but of course, part of life is also about practical issues like jobs and salaries and money issues. But in whichever job you pursue subsequently, often whichever field you had studied at university, you will still need to learn on the job to do your role well. And I don't think that philosophy students will be badly placed to do many lines of work, for example, in administration or management, where specific technical knowledge is not required, because these are things that you have to pick up in the specificity of your company and your job role. Certainly not everyone is suited to be a philosopher or a philosophy student for that matter, which is why it is important that you expose yourself to it. If this is the question you're asking, whether you should embark on studies in philosophy, you should try reading some philosophy texts by yourself and try to encounter it and see whether it's your cup of tea. Not all texts are equally simple naturally. Some require a lot of background knowledge, and perhaps those you need to be patient and put aside for now, while you may want to encounter simpler texts. And I have outlined some of these in a blog post, which I also post in the description. And maybe you should try tackling these first as your first steps in philosophy. I hope this video finds you well, and I hope that you have now something to ponder over. And it is never too late to begin philosophy. It is never too early to begin philosophy, as Epictetus would have said. The need for deep thinking remains, and I wish you a philosophical journey through life. Thank you.